And the 6:05 phone call is 23 seconds. You heard Paul Giroux talk about these phones. You heard him say from this witness stand how there's this command, the CSIM start, that's some engineering where you can have your computer instigate a phone call, and no matter what you do, it'll last 23 seconds. Mr. Kurtz's opening, which is not evidence, he said that the defendant called his cell phone to try to find it in his house, as if before he went to Harris Teeter he couldn't find his cell phone, so he called it. Well, if that's the case, he left himself a 23-second voicemail. That 6:05 phone call is a test. It is a test of this system, of how he's going to fabricate this phone call. There is no other explanation for it. By the defendant's own statement, he is in the house at that point. So then, 6:21, the defendant enters Harris Teeter from that southern route. At 6:37, the defendant, presumably, according to him, begins his trip back to Harris Teeter. And at 6:37, he calls his voicemail. That's the first call to the voicemail. And then there's that 6:40 phone call. That phone call that the defendant relies on and says, you can't convict him because there's this phone call. And the defendant says, well, there's no evidence that the defendant could have faked it, or there's no evidence in the house of the ways that it could be faked. Well, yes, there was one ingredient missing from how the defendant faked that phone call. We heard that he had this endpoint, this phone. That was on the defendant's desk. You saw it. You saw all these routers and these wireless routers that help connect his home phone network. And you saw the cable modem that connects his phone to the wall. So according to Mr. Giroux, a couple weeks ago, there's one ingredient missing. We need a router that has an FXO port, a port that you can basically plug the phone into the router so that your whole home phone system has your home phone number. And when you make calls out, it has your home phone number. When calls come in, you can answer it on that phone, and it has your home phone number. This is tremendously important. The defendant had that capability, had that ability in January, February. You heard witnesses say he had Cisco phones in his house, and Nancy wasn't pleased with the call quality, the fact that she thought he might be listening on. So you know he had that FXO port in that router. And until yesterday, we didn't know exactly what it was. Well, then you hear Greg Miclucci, his best friend from Cisco, come in and tell you that there are two 3825 ISR routers. And those are the two routers that can hold this FXO port. And you heard the defendant had purchased an FXO port on January 2nd. And he had taken these 3825 routers, one of them home, the one that the serial number ends in H. And when he did that, he had all the ingredients to make this happen, to make this phone call happen. And you heard Paul Giroux talk about all the different ways that he could make that happen. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's clear that he had the ability. And the defendant says, well, anyone could fake a phone call. Absolutely true. And then when you add to that to the fact that it's somebody who has a voice ability and expertise in voice that only 152 people in the world have, that makes it even more likely that he faked the 6:40 phone call. The defendant says, well, it was a 30-second phone call. It seems like it's a little long for, hey, go get some juice. You've heard the character of their relationship, Nancy and the defendant. How long are their conversations that they're having? Under this perceived theory that she called up and said, hey, get some juice. When Mr. Kurtz described it, or if I describe it, hey, honey, please get some juice. I'm very angry. There's no way that that's going to take longer than 10 seconds at the most. That call took 31 seconds. 6:41, the car enters the Harris Teeter parking lot. The defendant flies through those doors. You saw how he went through that door. He had to turn to get through those automatic doors because they weren't opening fast enough. And then he goes and buys this juice. Remember how he bought that juice? He started walking towards the detergent and stopped, and then walks over there to get the juice. I would offer to you it's because he's thirsty at that point.
What was the content that Mr. Cooper told you about the 6:40 a.m. phone call?
What his content of his statement?
Yes, sir.
That she called and said, pick up green juice for his child.
Was there anything else aside for that that you know of that was part of that particular conversation?
We don't believe the conversation ever took place.
Is there anything else that you've heard from Mr. Cooper about that conversation, about other information exchanged in that conversation?
We don't believe the conversation ever took place, sir.
Did Mr. Cooper ever tell you
yes, sir.
anything
Yes, sir.
in addition to a discussion of green juice at 6:40 a.m. on the telephone?
No, he told me about the green juice. But I thought you were talking about the truthfulness of it.
Is it your testimony that the question of whether or not the children would drink green juice was irrelevant because you had already made the determination that the phone call didn't take place?
We had not made a determination. That was one of the reasons why we looked into the green juice. But I thought you were saying it had to be, if she would have called for orange juice or whatever he said that she had called for was not the issue at hand. The issue at hand was that we didn't believe the phone call had occurred after we continued the investigation. At that point, when he talked to me on the 12th and the 13th, he did say that she called about green juice.
Now,
So we did look into the fact that green juice was something that she would request as opposed to orange juice, apple juice, what you would think children would drink. Green juice was an unusual thing. So yes, we did look into it. We also found out that that was one of his favorites also. So we didn't specify that it had to be green juice, orange juice, or apple juice, or anything else, but that was what we looked into because that's what he said.
now you've heard the testimony of people from Cisco,
Yes.
and you have been involved in the investigation throughout with the question of whether or not a phone call can be automated.
Yes.
What specific evidence do you have that shows that that phone call was automated?
I don't have any specific information, and I think that's one of the unusual issues here because there were so many different ways he could have done it. And like I said, even during his deposition, he stated that there were several different ways things like that could have been done. He had the motive, he had the means, he had the opportunity. To state specifically, only your client can tell specifically how he did it.
Actually, you talked about that part of his deposition, and what he says in the deposition, correct me if I'm wrong, is if you are on the same network, it can be done. He does not say that it can be done via a landline on a different network, does he?
I'd have to see the deposition again if you want specificity on what exactly he said. I'd have to see that again.
When I hear you saying there are ways it could have been done, but what the bottom line is you have absolutely nothing to point to say that it was done.
Again, as I said, there were several ways that he could have done it. There were several ways that were presented to me that he could have done it. That's what I was going with. We had no specific that he did it with a fax machine or he did it on his computer or he did it through his cell phones. We have no specificity on it. But there were several ways he could have done it as was presented to me, and that was the information that was viable at that time.
Detective, the fact that somebody could have the capability to commit a crime, does that mean that they're guilty of committing
Absolutely
a crime?
not.
Objection. Sustained.
Just because you believe that Mr. Cooper could have automated the phone call is proof to you that he did automate the phone call?
Sustained.
Request grounds, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Your statement that the phone call is an automated phone call is nothing more than speculation. Isn't that right?
Objection. I thought you said it was automated.
I don't remember what he said. I don't know if you can rephrase the question or if he can answer it if he knows if that's what he said.
Yes, again.
Your statement that the phone call was automated is nothing more than speculation.
I don't think I said it was automated.
What word did you use for the phone call that I characterized as automated?
I believe that he set the phone call up is the words I believe that he set the phone call up.
Okay. Aside for your belief that the phone call is set up, wait, is your belief that the phone call is set up anything more than mere speculation?
Asked and answered.
He didn't answer the question, Judge. It was sustained.
Well, then, you're asking a question on where you sustain.
Because of the use of the word automated.
Ask your question, go ahead.
Everything you're saying about the 6:40 a.m. phone call being set up, or however you want to characterize it, is pure speculation.
I don't believe it's pure speculation. I believe that I was shown several ways it could have been done, and that's what I was basing it on.
You don't have a single log entry from any router saying that that's what happened, do you?
No, I don't know.
You don't have any kind of phone records that indicate that's what happened, do you?
No,
You don't have any expert that can come in here and say that that is what happened, do you?
no, I don't.
You have achieved this opinion because of Mr. Cooper's expertise with voice over internet protocol telephony alone.
No. I didn't achieve that decision alone by his knowledge, no. But it did help in knowing that he has certain knowledge over and above the average person when it comes to phone usage.